A long time ago, humans and vampires clashed against each other for many bloody years to the point of ruining the world. The humans were placed in walled cities protected by the church, while they formed an elite group of vampire warriors called priests. Due to their great power and excellent fighting skills, the priests managed to defeat their adversaries. But once they had fulfilled their role, the church disbanded the priests and they faded into obscurity, even shunned by that society. In the present, a man named Priest is still haunted by his dream about not being strong enough to rescue one of his comrades at the Sola Mira hive. He tries to confess that this might be a feeling of doubt in his faith, but to no avail because the clergy only suggests loyalty to the church. Later, just as he is about to enter his room, Priest encounters a sheriff named Hicks from a town outside the walls called Augustine. He informs Priest that there has been an attack earlier against the family of Priest's brother Owen. Unfortunately, Owen's wife, Shannon, is killed and their daughter, Lucy, has been kidnapped, although Owen has survived the attack. Hicks figures that since he is an expert in vampire killing, he should have him on his team. As such, Priest heads to the Council of Clergy to be reinstated as a priest. But the head of the council, Aurelius, refuses because he believes there hasn't been a vampire attack on Augustine, but rather the works of wasteland bandits. One of the clergy's chamberlain attempts to vouch for Priest, but the decision has been made. Aurelius warns Priest that if he leaves the walled city, he will be excommunicated immediately. However, inside a bar, Priest decides to go against the decision, even though their dogma states that going against the church is going against God. At that moment, guards enter the bar to arrest Priest, but he quickly kills them using his extraordinary skills. And so he formally begins his mission by traveling miles away from the walled city and into the lawless wastelands. After a while of journeying, Priest arrives at his brother's ransacked home. While looking at a picture on the ground, Priest re-encounters Hicks. Together, they head to the main town of Augustine. They witness a salesman persuading the townspeople to buy his holy water as protection against vampires. Hicks is not amused, so he shoots the salesman's bottle in his car, causing the salesman to leave the place. The sheriff then reassures the people that they will be safe. Afterward, Priest visits his brother who has just been awake from the injuries he received. It turns out that Shannon was actually Priest's old flame, but they have to separate due to his obligation to the church. Right after this visit, Priest prepares for the upcoming search and rescue for Lucy. Hicks wants to come with him and Priest agrees. Meanwhile, Priest's disobedience is not appreciated by the church, so they send former Priest to track him down and either arrest or kill him. The following day, Priest notices that the footprints left outside his brother's house point toward the Nightshade Reservation up north. As such, Priest and Hicks head to that prison-like location. There, they see a community of humans called familiars, which are infected human beings that serve vampires. Priest and Hicks continue to look further inside the reservation and decide to enter an underground bunker. Inside, they see a terrified familiar in a room and Priest attempts to interrogate him. As this happens, Hicks gets attacked outside of the room by a group of familiars, forcing him to retreat upstairs. Fortunately, Priest arrives to easily handle the familiars. He captures one of them to interrogate. But by that point, it is already sundown, and it is the vampires' turn to come out of their hiding. The vampires are gigantic eyeless creatures whose skins are pale as moonlight. As his weapon, Priest uses small crosses which turn into shurikens to slice these creatures up. In the end, only one vampire remains and it retreats. As such, Priest interrogates the familiar about Lucy's whereabouts, and the terrified familiar answers that she was taken to the west. Afterward, they check the map to see what is in the west. Priest sees that it leads to the Sola Mira hive, the central setting of his repeated nightmares. Supposedly, all vampire hives in existence are already destroyed by the church, which is why they have to investigate the hive. Meanwhile, Lucy wakes up inside a cage on a moving train. A man named Black Hat tells Lucy that if she is let out of her cage, she will be torn apart to pieces by vampires. The scared Lucy declares that her uncle is a priest and that he will come to rescue her soon, something which Black Hat anticipates. Later, the same salesman from earlier informs Black Hat that he saw a priest and a sheriff team up in Augustine. Having no further use for him, Black Hat bites him in the neck, turning the salesman into a lowly familiar. At the same time, the priests that have been sent by the church are now at Augustine, surveying the footprints left behind by Priest and Hicks. The following day, Priest and Hicks continue their journey to the west where they pass by ruined buildings. They stop to rest somewhere and talk about Hicks' relationship with Lucy. It turns out that they are lovers, although he did not inform Owen about this. Priest warns him that if Lucy gets infected, he will have to kill her. Afterward, they drive toward the Sola Mira hive. Inside the dark hive, Priest remembers the grim ambush of his comrades there. He instructs Hicks to shoot anything inhuman before jumping into the great abyss in front of him. There, Priest encounters one of the priests that had been sent to kill him, Priestess. However, Priestess doesn't want to kill him because he was her ally in the past. All of a sudden, a Hive Guardian attacks them. Even though the enemy is much larger than them, the two expert fighters swiftly eliminate it. Hicks then shoots the creature in the head to finish it off. Now that they are three, they continue their investigation into the heart of the Hive, eventually discovering that the vampires have bred once again. They also discover that the vampires dug a tunnel that points toward the town of Jericho where the other priests went. Right at that moment, Black Hat arrives along with his train full of vampires in the town of Jericho. Just like that, chaos descends upon the sleepy town. The other three priests attempt to stop Black Hat, but he is too powerful for them to handle. It is already sunrise when Priest's group arrives in the now abandoned Jericho. Immediately, Priest sees the other three priests crucified in the middle of the town. Confused, they wonder what kind of vampire can easily kill three priests. Afterward, the three deduce that they must have come from a train, seeing a train track that leads to the walled cities. Due to the pollution in those areas, the sun never shines there anymore, which means that those cities are defenseless. As such, they take it into their own hands to do everything in their power to stop that train before it arrives in the walled cities. Meanwhile, Black Hat prepares a meal for Lucy, who hasn't eaten for days. When Lucy asks Black Hat what he is, Black Hat reveals that he is a former priest that had seen the pure souls of vampires. For this reason, he will cleanse the world, and he will use Priest to help him achieve this. Back on the priests, Priestess gives a cross weapon to Priest, telling him that she has held on to it for a long time. Afterward, the three head to a nearby cliff to witness the vampire train. But Hicks points a gun toward Priest, threatening him that if he kills Lucy, he will eliminate him there and then. It is here that Priestess reveals that Lucy is actually Priest's daughter and that Owen is the one that cared for her when Priest had to fulfill his duty. Knowing this, Hicks realizes that Priest actually carries a much greater burden if ever Lucy becomes infected. With this issue now settled, the three rides toward the moving train. They split up to cover different sections of the train. Priest requests to blow up the rails even if he was still inside the train, a request that Priestess has to accept. After splitting up, Priest climbs on top of the moving train, only to find Black Hat standing there. It turns out that Black Hat was actually Priest's former friend that he lost in Sola Mira, the reason for his nightmare. He tells Priest that when he fell into the lair of the vampires, the Vampire Queen saved him instead of killing him using her own blood. For this reason, he became the first human vampire and he wants Priest to join him. An intense fight ensues between them, with Black Hat overpowering Priest due to his newfound vampire strength. Meanwhile, Priestess has set up the bombs on the railway, but some familiars manage to disable them. As such, she has no choice but to deliver the payload to the train. On the other hand, Hicks has infiltrated the train and encounters vampires inside the sacks, causing him to run to the other room. There, he sees Lucy being dragged away by a familiar to another room. All of a sudden, Priest emerges from the floor, and the vampires from the other room manage to enter. But Hicks smartly shoots the ceiling, letting the sunlight in which stops the vampires' advances. The two then run through the other wagons until they find Lucy with a familiar. Black Hat shows up again and throws Hicks off the train. Because of this, Lucy fights back against the familiar and burns him. She then tries to stab Black Hat, who tells her that she is like her father. It is here that Lucy learns that Priest is her real father. He slaps Lucy, causing her to lose consciousness. Priest tries to kill Black Hat, but Black Hat impales him to the walls. He then takes Lucy above the train to bite her neck. Fortunately, Priest escapes from impalement and throws his cross weapon toward Black Hat, hitting him in the neck. It is here that Priestess comes to the scene by driving her motorcycle full of explosives into the train. She jumps just before she hits the train. The train explodes and Black Hat burns to death, along with the vampires inside. Priest and the others miraculously survive. Later on, Priest returns to the walled city and throws a vampire's head right in front of the clergies for everyone to see. Aurelius has an outburst, still convincing the people that there is no threat of vampires, but Priest doesn't care as he will still fulfill his duty to protect mankind against these monsters. The concept of a vampire-hunting priest is not a new thing, but this movie manages to make it into something exhilarating. It is entertaining all the way through, and the gloomy atmosphere of this world works well with the premise of the movie. Overall, the movie shows the danger of an absolute rule. The church's dogma, which is that going against them is going against God, has been used to subject the people to mindlessly follow them without question. As such, people like Priest, Priestess, and Hicks are needed in this world.